Welcome home. We are WNST. Taos from Baltimore. Baltimore positive. We are positively into the football season and the baseball pennant race and Pearl Jam and Bruce Springsteen in town this week. So it's the rock and roll season as well. It's always crab cake season and the oyster season in September. I have the Gold Rush Sevens doublers I'm giving away. I'll have the Raven scratch offs next week. We are at Cooper's this weekend, doing the Fells Point Oyster Festival. I'm not oystered out because I keep eating them different ways, but it is a month where we're educating folks about the Oyster Recovery Partnership and crab cakes and where they all come from. I'm getting educated on journalism and life as well. If you've read my Declaration of Independence after 40 years of doing this and being liberated from my media credentials as well as my professional designation after 40 years of owning a radio station, doing this all of my life, there are other folks leaving the profession in lots of ways. I had Mark Viviano on. I had Jamie Costello on. At some point, Marty Bass will leave WJZ. I'll have him on. But I'm going around just finding people who cover sports and guys I've had on my show for a couple of decades. Michael Gehlken is one of those guys. Familiar to anybody that covers the National Football League or watches other teams. He's been a guest on this program, is covering the Raiders, is covering the Cowboys. He's covered several teams, and now he's left the industry. And I saw his little tweet a couple months ago, and I was like shocked, like everyone else, that he didn't want to run around and chase athletes 24 hours a day the rest of his life. But it is good to have him back on. He's been a real journalist here, and a guy that I've had on covering real serious stuff when franchises are moving and stuff like that. And I've seen him at owners meetings, Super Bowls, and all those places that I've been thrown out of. We welcome Michael Gehlken. What are you doing with your life? Are you trying to be normal and not be like one of those NFL beat guys that I've known all my life?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a great father, a great husband, and sometimes it takes you in places that maybe 10 years ago you wouldn't have envisioned for yourself, but you recognize it when you see it, that it's the right thing to do, and I'm doing it. So, you mentioned I've covered a lot of NFL teams over the years, three of them, Chargers in San Diego, Raiders in Oakland during their transition to Las Vegas, and then Cowboys for the past five. And it was what I wanted to do. I remember when I first wanted to be a journalist, I was in eighth grade. I remember when I first really solidified that at freshman year of high school and junior year of high school, 16 years old, I wanted to be a sports writer. And there was no sport I enjoyed more watching and consuming than the NFL. So I feel, somewhat fulfilled in that respect. I'd be lying if I told you that during training camp or during week one, I could just turn it off in terms of seeing storylines, thinking about questions I would ask, the way I consumed, or digested the game. All that is still very much that of an NFL reporter, but I am, again, a family man, and I just believed my family was going to be happier where my wife is from, which is Washington, D.C. And,
Well, you're closer to good crab cakes, and you're going to get one from me at some point. So that makes it even better if you come sit next to me.
exactly. Well, I'm sold on crab cake. I've just been gorging myself with nothing but for a few weeks now. So keep them coming.
I think I met you right around the time my wife had a transplant. You're of German descent, and I think we just chatted, and I don't even know why. I mean, I used to go to these combines where there were only 50 people, 50 reporters. I was one of them 20, 25 years ago. Eric DeCosta, strangely enough, and Phil DeSavage, I should name him that. The two of them were the ones who were adamant about me doing the combine. And I started going to the combine. I'd be going to the Super Bowl every year. And the Super Bowl was only for people on junkets or people that could drive to it wherever it was. It wasn't the scene that it's become in regard to Radio Row, which I did for 27 years. And then people like you came along, not just guys and girls, people of color. Imagine that, young people. All of that happened at combines where I started seeing people like, how did that person get a press pass? What are they? Oh, they're with the college thing, or they're with the this, that, or they're here for that. And then it became this giant thing that college people came to and young people came to cover for their websites or their web pages and stuff like that. And I started seeing young people around, quite frankly, my son's age. My son will turn 40 next week. So it starts to get me to the point where, like, who are the 20-year-olds? And you were one of that generation, and look, I would put any of the younger people that anybody sees on NFL Network or these places, I would put you into that next generation because I've been covering the league for almost 30 years. And I thought like the difference between being a fanboy and being a blogger and doing this professionally is obviously something you disseminated, but I see a lot of fanboy in regard to younger people. And then I see the team websites, which and the league jobs, which become two-thirds of the jobs. And I did wonder when a guy like you leaves, I've wondered for anybody who's younger that comes to me, wants to be you or me from the previous generation, where are the jobs? Where is the journalism? Where is that eighth grade version of you or me right now that says one day I'm going to cover the Frankfurt Galaxy once they move to once the league moves to Europe. But down the line, I'm wondering where that pipeline is from a journalism standpoint, because I'm starting to believe like the journalism part's dead when they're losing people like you. And that's my highest compliment to pay to you.
Well, thank you. I'll take the compliment, the spirit that's intended. I mean, I hope that journalism is alive and well, and I think there are some obvious headwind forces at play that make it difficult for certain people to break in. But really, once you break in, to kind of elevate and work up the ladder and get to a level that is satisfying. So I can only speak on my own experience in terms of that respect. I'm right now I'm at a family member's home, and I'm we're moving into our new house this month, and in DC, and I've got so much of my own personal in terms of professional future that I've got to iron out. I decided to step away from the Cowboys in my final day was August 2nd. Made the decision in July, and so I need to identify.
This is fresh. This is really new for you. And I
Yeah, so
appreciate you coming on and discussing it because I didn't want it to be personal, but for me, it's personal being thrown out and thinking like, who's going to be in when they've downsized the press box and the guy who's running it has gone fascist. I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't know how people break into this by doing an honorable job anymore. I'm beginning to wonder. And then I see people doing an honorable job that are getting pushed out. And I've seen the underside of who would be there. And it really is, how big of a fan are you? And how much are you willing to endure to cover the sport? To be a fan, not to be an objective reporter when Ray Rice punches his wife in an elevator. And I worry about that for all of the teams and for the fan base and for how big the NFL's become.
yeah,
I think you're doing a good thing walking away, by the way. And whatever
yeah,
you do, I would think you're going to be a lot happier. And by the way, it's a nice working environment you had in Dallas. I got toured around there by Scott during in Arlington last October. And I'm like, I said to Luke, this is a little different than the place you come to work, going to work there in Dallas every day.
yeah. You won't hear me say a negative thing about like the Cowboys organization in terms of what it was like working in that building. The PR staff. I've seen great public relations and maybe not so over the course of my career and at different moments, sometimes at the same place, and just consistently with the Cowboys, phenomenal experience for me. That
And I
really,
was treated the same way last year. Luke and I were treated like, I'm like, are you sure you're going to be this nice to me? Because they're not this nice to me at home, but I really was blown away at the Dallas thing. And when I saw how big that was, I thought, Bisciotti can afford to do this. He doesn't want to.
yeah,
They could all do whatever craziness that is down there, and the business model of fans treating the players, quite frankly, like pigeons, a little bit. But that's where the NFL vision is. I saw that in Dallas last year, and it's something most fans have never seen. I don't think what you experience to go to work to every day. Certainly a little bit different than covering the Raiders out in Oakland. I was at that facility too.
yeah. No comment, but I honestly have a good relationship with Will Kiss, the PR director there. And I
No,
think
I'm
that
just saying what the I haven't been to the Vegas Raiders. No. I like
I
Will
haven't been
too.
there either.
I no,
Yeah,
I'm just saying like the working conditions of what the league has become from a
I hear you.
financial standpoint and building barriers and gates. It really is it's a testament to how much people love the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I guess for me where I'm at, mentally with it, because I think it's a really interesting conversation of kind of the future of it, because you want good people to be, you know, filling up these journalism jobs and asking tough questions and informed questions and bringing fresh content and not being, I think sometimes I see this and NFL beats, not necessarily the one that I just most recently come from, but in general, I see beats where all the reporters, by and large, are kind of migrating from one press conference to another press conference, and what they all end up kind of writing the same thing, and there's just not a lot of originality. There's just kind of some low-hanging fruit stories that if you're a fan of the team, you're kind of getting the same produce from every outlet on some days. And to me, it's just nothing I ever had an appetite for. And certainly in Dallas, when it's so saturated in terms of the content, where you turn on a radio station and, like it or not, there's a decent chance, more so than other teams, that they're talking about the Cowboys. And TV, and just it's so ubiquitous. And so I was really focused on, all right, how I'm gonna differentiate my content so it's different, it's fresh, it's smart. I kind of identified, a couple of years ago that I want to create non-casual content for non-casual fans. Like that's going to be my approach. And I had a sense that there was a possibility, probably around training camp last year, so 2023 July, that could be my final training camp, and that season could be my final season covering the Cowboys and perhaps covering any NFL team. And as my wife and I talked more about, potentially moving to DC and raising our 1-year-old daughter around family. And so my approach throughout the season and throughout camp was, I don't want to just write a story about nickel cornerback Jordan Lewis's foot. I want to write the story, or I'm going to talk to his doctor. I'm going to get his x-rays. I'm going to, like, write a, 2,000 word piece on it. I don't want to just write a story on left tackle Tyron Smith and what makes him a good player. I want to capture what makes him great. I want this to be a story that people can reflect upon. I want to talk to 30 different people, both inside the organization and those who have gone through it and are now elsewhere. And same thing with, profiles on Jake Ferguson and Tyler Guyton, rookie first round pick this year. Like I just wanted to write kind of the just the story on a guy. And so that subtle, definite, from an indefinite article to the definite article on a player. That was my mentality. And so I just think as a journalist, you have to kind of decide what is you want to stand for, and what is it you're going to bring differently. And then if you can find, you know, some niche, some way to make your stories and content, it doesn't have to be necessarily written word, but just different in organic, and just, I don't know, true. And then the way that you converse with people, players in the building, staff, coaches, and the sort, build trust, build rapport. Those are all the things that I cared about. Not and just you're juggling stakeholders. Or if I'm writing a story about a player, I'm writing it for the fan who's reading it, where I need to be able to look at a fan I might see on the street, or wherever it may be, and know that, whatever questions they may have had, I worked my tail off to ensure that it was answered. And then likewise, I'm also writing to be able to look at that player in the eye the next day when I see him in the locker room, that I was fair to him, or the coach, or whoever it may be. Like when I'm writing a story, I'm just trying to think about, how do I create as level of an insight as I can, so that everyone is seen and heard, and that it kind of feeds all mouths in that respect. So I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a tangent, but I think there's a lot of place for really good journalism still. For me, I've covered 3 NFL teams, so to go pivot to cover the Commanders, like, why? I mean, it's not like it's necessarily the most financial of professions. You got to travel a good amount. I really want to grow in terms of my career, and to be a beat reporter for the fourth time, for maybe another newspaper. Otherwise, it just didn't. I just didn't really see the point. It's if it was once my dream, I kind of lived it. At a certain point, you're a husband and you're a father. I'm just thinking about, how am I going to be the best provider, and be present and be there for as many moments that I know don't come again. So, yeah, that's kind of why I don't feel pushed out at all. But as I kind of pull away, I'm thinking about that from kind of a big picture standpoint of, all right, I feel good about the work that I've created, and now, I got to make sure the people most important in my life come first.
Michael Gehlken is here. He is a decade and a half long beat reporter for the National Football League, last covering the Dallas Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News. I go back to Dave Smith at the Dallas Morning News like 40 years ago, sending resumes out and being an agate clerk at the newspaper and dreaming of doing one Super Bowl, as I would always just one big game, one thing. And all these years later, seeing folks like you live your dream and then move on from that. I do think people think they know a lot about football. Everybody that comes up, everybody that's ever called thinks they have some unique perspective about it. I thought that before we even had the team here, right? Like when we were fighting to get the team came here. I thought, well, I've been a sports writer for a dozen years. I'll have some perspective on it. I think it's changed a lot with the largesse of the league and the fact that they play 4 nights a week, whenever they want, however they want, practices whenever they want. Like the timing for what they do to my reporter, Luke, who's 40 and has been with me 15 years, kind of sort of in your age group,
Precisely.
and when press conferences are, when at the whim of the coach, how the news breaks, how we break the news on our text service and all of that, and how breaking news isn't like the thing it was when you were in the 8th grade where everybody gave you credit for it and all of that, and you had your scoop and got your flowers. It's all just sort of gone within a minute in the era of social media. So nobody even knows who the really good reporters are unless you're really paying attention and can identify that. I just, the amount of knowledge that it takes to do this well, and for me to identify a guy like you and saying, all right, that guy's not foolish. I'll put him on my show because he knows what he's talking about, because he can have a half an hour conversation about the subject matter and not do it from a fanboy perspective. And I keep going back to that because I don't know what else to call it, because I think it's been misidentified, as well as team website experts but are really PR writers, right? Like, so finding that spot where, especially where there's controversy, it's always controversy about the Cowboys because they never win a Super Bowl, right? So just the fact when they don't win, there's why, and then people come to someone like you, and then someone like Charlene, who's been doing this for 40 years on that beat in that room that when she was the only woman in the friggin' world doing it, and now that's all caught up. But I think that there's a knowledge part of doing this job that people, and this is a tribute to Luke Jones, who works for me. I've been watching people forever. I took thousands of resumes for everybody that professionally, like you, went to J school, wanted to do it, as well as fanboy people that thought they were in coaches, and people that knew players, people that thought they knew football well enough or sports well enough. I just find it really hard to be good enough to do this professionally. And I think the barrier to doing that is extreme. And then 15 years of battle work that you've done, there's no 23-year-olds coming taking that job at the Dallas Morning News. It's going to have what you've earned in doing this. And I think you're even more interesting. And one of the reasons I reached to you, you've chased teams away. You've lost your gig because the team left town a couple times. That's just a crazy thing that some of my reporters dealt with when I was a boy at the paper, when the Colts just left, and like, what am I going to do? And they're like, go cover the Redskins, back in 1984, we had that. But you've had a hell of a journey on the inside of this to have some perspective of how much these deeply entrenched billionaires that are so community concerned, how they really behave and act.
Well, there's no doubt that business first and foremost. To your point, I was laid off on Valentine's Day, 2017, by the San Diego Union Tribune. Technically, they called me the day before, but there was, and I knew the call was coming because there's no sense keeping a San Diego Chargers, or an NFL reporter in a city without an NFL team. And so, yeah, when the Chargers moved, weeks after, then I was told that unless I wanted to move I already told the Union Tribune that I'm an NFL reporter, and so I'm not interested in doing anything else with the newspaper. And so they said, okay. And so then they let me know. I'm like, okay. And
so you could have kept your gig and gone and covered preps the way Buster Olney did 40 years ago, like I did, the San Diego Sockers. You had
think
no
there was a
interest.
future for me in San Diego if I wanted one there. Yeah. But decided not to. So then cover the Raiders for the newspaper in Las Vegas. So I decided to swim with the tide of relocation rather than go against the current. And so
We were at that press conference together in Scottsdale, right? I was there, right?
I was, yeah, I didn't have a when they got approved.
Yeah, I was in the front row because I had never been there when they passed the gavel down and Mark Davis says, I'm taking the team to Vegas. And Jack Del Rio was my friend and was coaching the team at the time. And I remember being out front and he said, yeah, I got players texting me about the team moving to Vegas. I said, you better make sure you're still on the team when you get to Vegas. He wasn't coaching the team by the time I got to Vegas. So he read the tea leaves to me out at the Biltmore that night.
Yeah, I probably was at a Stone Brewery or something when that was going on because I was in between. So I think maybe I was yeah, I was
Oh,
I
that was a
just
month later. That was
yeah, I was a
March.
month later.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
so
All
and
right.
then once the team relocated to or was approved to relocate, then I reached out to the outlet in Las Vegas and then I was on their list and so we kind of got the ball
Why
rolling.
was it important to cover the league for you? What was it about your obsession? Because now you walk away. A couple years later, you're like, a couple years ago, I was like, anything to cover that because I know you. I've known you as
Yeah.
that guy. And I'm thinking, you were a lifer, dude. You were at that point, I would have said, you're going to be doing this as long as Howard Balzer. If you're willing to chase franchises and move around, you were pot committed, really.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because when the team moved from San Diego to Los Angeles, I had a choice. I could either leave San Diego, the city that I grew up in, where my childhood friends and my family are. I could leave San Diego and be an NFL reporter someplace else, or I could stay and just not be an NFL reporter. And I just wasn't done with it yet. And I think part of the reason was I really wanted to see how good I am or how good I was. I really wanted to kind of prove my laurels somewhat to myself, but to others. I think I just wanted, I really believed in the caliber of reporter that, I am. And there was one time, I'll just be completely honest, I won't give the person's name. But sometimes when, the Chargers would be hosting uh, a team over the course of the season. If I knew a beat reporter, especially if it was a younger beat reporter, because I liked keeping tabs and tracking other reporters who are around my age. Um, I would invite them. Let's go out to 7 Grand or City Tacos in the North Park area and just like let's just hang out and grab some dinner and just chat. And so there was during one game the night before there was an East Coast reporter. He and I are out, and he says something to me that really lit a fire under me, where he told me, "You do great work covering the Chargers. Like you're awesome. Like yada yada." But I mean, it's the Chargers. Like, how many reporters are you competing against? Like, who are you really like? How many reporters are in the locker room every day? Like, who's it's kind of saying that basically you're doing great on freshman football or JV, you're killing it, but like this is not a varsity beat. And so I just didn't like the idea of everything that I was doing, and I just didn't like the perception, or I don't know, I really just pissed me off because I want to be great at what I do, and so I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna when the Chargers move, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go someplace else, and I'm gonna demonstrate in a entirely different place that I can kick ass just like I did here. That's my internal conversation that I usually don't externalize, but that was my mindset. And then
You moved
cover
to Oakland to cover the Oakland Raiders for the Las Vegas paper. Am I correct in saying that?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then after 2.5 years of that, I saw a position open to cover the Cowboys and applied and then it was there's some personal reasons there too where I just met my you know now wife and we were newly engaged at that point and there's NFL cities where we both could do and when I signed up to cover the Raiders to move to Las Vegas that was an individual choice like that was an I decision but once you know you're in a partnership and meet your person there's only we decisions and so Las Vegas in terms of her work and her life it wasn't really a town that suited her and so we went down all 32 clubs all 30 cities and say all right what markets could you and I both do and Dallas was on our list it was one where we overlapped about half the teams in the league did and that was one of them and so I applied and again got it and spent 5 seasons there and then we had our daughter it was like I don't need this anymore the way I did when the Chargers were newly relocated, and I feel like I did it. I feel like I did it at a high level, arguably the most competitive beat, and I did it in a manner which I'm proud in terms of I treated people well. I was fair. I was curious. I was someone who's extremely objective and detailed, and built a reputation where that byline, if I reported something, it meant something. And again, having done it, in some respect from a beat capacity, the highest level to go cover the Commanders, I just again didn't really see the point. So, why sign up for the travel? Why sign up for some of the rigors of it? And if it doesn't really light my fire the way it used to, so I think some of it just kind of got a little bit extinguished, and so it just didn't really make sense to me the way it did in 2017, where I was younger. Let's see, 2017, I was, tw 30 years old, almost 30, I'm 29 years old then. I just feel like I'm too much left to do ahead of me. But now at 37, it's a different sense and a completely different chapter of my life.
Michael Gehlken's almost won. Are you on the Maryland side? Are you really in the district? You're DMV, so you're local, man. Yeah, I
It's
mean
just
the
not,
Terps
yeah,
need you to buy tickets on Saturday. Now you got nothing to do. So
yeah.
try,
Yeah, we're renting right now in Chevy Chase, Maryland, but the house we just purchased is in DC. So we'll
you
be
are in the free state. Well, then you can get a Maryland lottery ticket. You're a Maryland resident right now. Michael Gehlken joins us here, longtime NFL beat writer, covered the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Cowboys most recently for the Dallas Morning News. So, big picture, and you said to me, "No, I'm not on the beat. You can't." You watched football last week, so I'll get the league itself. If you never work in the league again or never work in football, and you go on to write presidential novels about Kamala Harris, hopefully. What would you say to people about the league? And the thing I say to folks, I don't know if you read this book or not, but Mark Leibovich wrote a book called The Big Game on the league, and was a real biting sort of. He embedded with the league for a year and went around and wrote about it, and it was an amazing book. But it was not flattering in any way. But I found it to be so dead on in reading it from my immersion and experience as a professional doing this all of my adulthood. What do you make of the league on the outside as now just a consumer of it?
um I mean there's such a it's such a complex question to answer. I mean, as a viewer of it, I think it is becoming more difficult to watch in terms of finding where a game is. The days of it, Sunday being Fox and CBS, and just it just used to be easier. Now it's a Peacock subscription. You go to Amazon, it's bouncing around. It's just it's a really wider net in terms of the what you need to have a subscription to in order to have access to all content, and not to mention some of the direct TV type stuff. I don't personally even experience, but I understand some of the complaints that people have had. So I guess my concern is that the NFL is a business, and it's a monster of one. I mean, the Cowboys are a $10 billion operation, as they've been described. But but the NFL, like, I sometimes worry that such a focus on business and earning more, at some point, do you overstep? And at some point, do you? I mean, look, I've seen it in San Diego, where I've got my friend Matt, he's got tattoo removed. It used to have a lightning bolt on it. Because the business side of the NFL took over, and an owner needed to go to a market, he felt, to, you know, he just couldn't build in San Diego, and felt he needed to, join the
This is one
stadium.
thing I'd show Chad Steele. If I ever walked and said, what this is? This is my Baltimore Colts belt buckle from when I was 8 years old. I know what's up. You know what I'm saying? Like I know I was an Oiler fan. I know what's up. So there is a point where the league doesn't care about anybody or anything, and that's been going on long before you and I got involved. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
I just think there's it's the league has to be very conscious and cognizant of where what it's asking of fans. And I think the gambling aspect of that and how that's going to change things already. Um, it's a really, really interesting time for this league, and it's experienced such radical growth for decades, and every other sports league in this country wishes it had it. But I just think being sometimes the best place for your business is where it is at present. And so not to say I'm, anti-business growth, but I mean, again, the NFL is a behemoth, and you just want to make sure that the fan experience is preserved first and foremost, and it's amplified. And so at certain points, how do we keep our fan base from being disenchanted, and just being aware of that. So if you're asking me about the league and kind of where it is, I think that's a fair thing. Something I've kind of sensed, I think, over the start of the season, as someone who's got a bit of a different perspective than he did previously. Focus on the viewing experience, and hearing some things from fans who, otherwise I wouldn't be hearing from, because I'm, at a practice facility, or I'm at the stadium on game day. So I think that part of it has been something that I've kind of picked up on.
Well, you've been interesting too because you've covered these pauper franchises that, I mean, the Oakland Raiders and the facility at the end of the airport by Oakland. San Diego was sort of moving out the whole time. And then you get to Dallas, and I can't even begin to portray. I wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean? Like, Scott invited us over. We were there for a minute going to a baseball game when the Orioles got eliminated. We thought we were going to be there 3 days. They got eliminated the first 6 hours we were there. So we were just kind of hanging around, having barbecue, hitting some hard eight. And I went up there, and man, I've been doing this since my first press pass is in 1984, covering minor league hockey, covering the AHL Skipjacks in a building that was awful then, and a little community ice skate rink where these guys are just trying to, get their work in or whatever. And I see how large it's all gotten, from when the Ravens showed up here practicing in an old beat up police facility because Art didn't have any money and was trying to get it done, to whatever that Dallas thing was when I showed up there. And I don't even know how to explain it to people. It felt like entering a different city, because I think it might, even on the postal code, it might be. And then it felt ostentatious beyond belief with the artwork and the marble and then I saw where the press conferences were. I saw the locker room. I saw the practice field. I saw this giant building. I was told that nobody's allowed to watch practice with like anything, but everybody can see it, but you're not allowed to put pictures on, like all of this stuff. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, John Harbaugh wouldn't like this. I'm thinking, certain paranoia. Bill Belichick would say, close. Bill Gates a mile around the facility. We don't want anybody near anything. Jera does things different down there, and I think you've had such an incredible exposure to the Hades of the NFL and the Saudi Arabias. I mean, you've seen all aspects of how the league operates, from penny pinching, even though you're a billionaire, to let's go all in, which is the way Jerry does everything apparently.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the wide spectrum of what an NFL facility can look like, and thinking that can be had within a building. I will say, and you hinted upon it, but not every person, not every coach specifically loves the fact that the Cowboys practice, their outdoor field is right next to, like, you could throw a rock and shatter a window of the Dr. Pepper headquarter building is right there. There's a hotel, you can binoculars, have at it. I mean, it's line of sight is there, and they practice in Oxnard, California for training camp. And for the longest of time, it was just dirt surrounded these practice fields there. And over recent years, there in 2020 and 2021, when the team got back from after not having been there in 20 because of COVID, they got there, and suddenly there was this housing village just sprouted out. And so people are in their backyards, looking at everything that the Cowboys are doing in Oxnard. And there's one guy who's got security cameras pointed directly at their field. So no matter anything that they do, he can see it. And so it's very, very unique. And if you think every head coach like Mike McCarthy, that he's just super comfortable with that, no, that's not how he was brought up in the league. And so there's something different about the Dallas Cowboys. You hear people describe that, like that's a good example of it. And then you've got people in, when you're in the locker room or you're in the weight room, you walk down the hallway, you might walk past a tour guide group, People doing these walking tours. And so the Cowboys make so much money. Jerry Jones has done a phenomenal job of, creating business in Frisco, Texas. And I'm just talking about, those tours and the facility itself, but I mean the grounds, the land that he has in that area, and all the restaurants and the sort. It's immaculate and all first class, and so um,
You feel
it's
like Troy Aikman the minute you walk in,
it's a far cry. Yeah, it's a far cry from Murphy Canyon or Alameda in terms of where the San Diego Chargers and Oakland Raiders practice, respectively.
What are you going to do with your life, Michael Gehlken?
I got a really hard job right now, which is, you know, when not, taking a look to see if there's anything professionally that might be a right fit, worth chasing. I got this 17-month-old who is incredible, and it is such a privilege to watch her grow every single day. Like everyone says, to it's all going to fly by and to soak it up, and so I'm trying like heck to do so. And every morning, when she's getting her day started, I tell myself, this is the oldest she's ever been, and it's the youngest she's ever going to be. Every day I say that. And so I just try to take each day and help her learn and watch her grow. She just took her first step last night. And so,
Whoa,
yeah,
way. All right.
yeah,
All
she's
right.
been
So
more
you
of
book
a,
onto my show. We get progress, Gelkin.
still
That's what we
breaking
do.
news, still breaking news. Yeah. And so it's the best. But I mean, far and away the most difficult job I've ever had. I mean, NFL reporter, I'm not just saying it because it's something that people say, but this is far and away more difficult than being a reporter. Far more difficult than covering press conferences, going to games, and all that sort of a thing. So, um, it's an ass kick sometime, but I'm just trying to be grateful for it because I know, tomorrow I'll wake up, I'll be 75, 80 years old. I'm gonna look back, I'm gonna think how wonderful it was that I could just spend time with my daughter. That being said, I'll take her to a playground, and there will be a lot of, you know, nannies with the kids that they're monitoring and caring for, and because the parents are at work, and I'm just there with my daughter, and I'm thinking, God, I gotta get a job. I'm just so not used to this, and so I'm not comfortable with it. I'd be lying. I don't want to BS you and say that, oh, it's just the best, but it's amazing and it's challenging, and the highs are just you know unreal. I can see why people with one kid have multiple often, because the dopamine and all that stuff is just unreal. Just having that connection with someone and watching that person become their own, it's amazing. So I don't miss football. I mean, I can't turn it off in terms of my mind. Thinking about angles and stories I'd be writing, and I think I would have broken that news, and all that. I do that still, but I really try to be where my feet are, and it's such a special place to be.
After all of that about your child, I was going to ask, do you think Lamar is going to win the Super Bowl? But what difference does it make?
I don't care. It's a bet.
Is Lamar going to win a Super Bowl?
I mean, there's no reason there far. I mean, he'd be far better than so many quarterbacks who have. So if it was only so simplistic in terms of a single quarterback, we've seen some great quarterbacks. Dan Marino, Philip Rivers, I covered. I mean, there's others, no doubt that don't do it, and so it's a team game. And a lot can go right and a lot can go wrong. That even having the best player on the field sometimes isn't enough to be the best team in the end. So it's but can he? Absolutely. There's no doubt. I thought he was pretty, his ability to take over a game, and what might be a low percentage third down play when you have someone like him who can create when it breaks down. He's phenomenal as a fan now. Who knows for how long I'll be just a fan, but for a fan now, I have a lot of fun watching him. He's on. I'm quick to watch.
Well, you're really close to the games. Anything happens to Luke, maybe they would credential you because you're a professional, at least perceived to be. So I might put you on call, get you a sitter down there, come up here and see some football here because I know you know what you're talking about. What a great week to have you on, man. We're playing the Raiders this week, playing the Cowboys next week, and you thought I wanted to talk about strategy with you. Well, no. I just wanted to talk about the unique nature of your decision to walk off the beat, and what a great job you've always done, and you've been a great friend to the program. I can't wait to see what's next for you. I want you to take on Leibovich's role and write the next big game is what I want you to do. I want you to write big game too and embed yourself in the league and come up with all the real stuff fans want to know about.
Yeah, I haven't been approached about a possible book. Still deciding whether or not that's the direction I'm going to go. It has to be the right, fit and a lot of things to figure out. I mean, that's a hell of a lift to put on while you've got the 1-year-old. So I don't know if that's the
You ever
time
make
to
it
do
on a
it.
Jerry's bus or no? Is that only for Leibovich? You didn't make it on there?
I made it on the bus. Yeah.
All right, all right. You know, I'm not going to ask. That'll be in the book. I'll let you write that in the book. I do
No,
hope.
not at all like that. I mean, Jerry
No.
Jones would have interviews where all the reporters would come in and during daylight. Have been there afterward as well, but not at all. Nothing like that.
Well, I mean, I saw the tour bus everywhere he was. When you see the bus, you're like, "Oh, Jerry's in town. Jerry got here. It's Indianapolis." So, hey, you did a great job, and you're doing a great job with the family thing as well. And I don't think anybody in our audience could listen to your words and not understand. Well, that's why he's not there. So, in 30 minutes, you made it all make sense to me, Mike. So I appreciate you, man. And welcome to the neighborhood. Don't be a stranger. You're in the DMV here. We have good stuff here. You're on the right coast at this point, not the left coast.
It's such a cliche. I don't even want to ask, but damn it, I want to know. Best crab cake place. Where am I going?
You know what? Anywhere I am, probably. Here's the thing I tell people about crab cakes because I've had hundreds and hundreds of places, and this isn't my shtick. And part of it is I do have sponsors that sell crab cakes. Every sponsor I have is crab cakes completely different. So
Mhm.
that makes it and I had this conversation last night with my buddy Ray Bachman, my longtime producer. He's like, it's amazing. Nobody makes a crab cake the same way. So I would tell you, as a tourist, which you'll always be until, unless you're here when you're like 70, I would say try them all. But I would say come up to Baltimore. I'll take you to Faithley's. I'm doing the show there next Friday. Very mustard forward crab cake, Maryland meat, very sweet, but mustard forward if you like that, and also fried, which is the way I like it. Come over to East Baltimore to Costas. Going to be more Old Bay, going to be more Jo, more of that salt flavor that we like on the east side. You go uptown, maybe Coco's. You're going to get more of that country club, creamy, sweeter flavor, and more of a bigger crab cake and a broiled crab. So they're different. So I would say
Yeah.
have one of each is what I would say, and then you're going to decide what your favorite crab cake is.
Yeah, I remember traveling to a game in Baltimore several years ago. It's back when I was covering the Chargers in San Diego, and my colleague Kevin and AC and I we went to G&M
Right by
and
the airport. There you go.
right by
Now
the
that's a
airport.
more spicy crab cake. There's has a little Tabasco in it. Very unique. The G&M crab
Yeah, we
cake,
liked it.
not like other places.
It's so long I don't remember the flavor profile or texture otherwise. I remember there's a lot of crab, which I appreciated. Um,
That's because you're in Maryland.
yeah, I would
They
expect
throw
nothing
you
less.
out if you serve a crab without crab here, you know. But be careful because people say that's got too much filler in it. I'm a poor boy from Dundalk, man. My parents only could afford the claw meat, so the filler is the slurry, and that's where the flavor is. So
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not a snob. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
jumbo lump crab for me to love it. As a matter of fact, little fried hockey pucks. That's what they serve. Back when I was in the real media at Memorial Stadium in the '80s, I covered the
Mhm.
Orioles, and the Orioles press box served these little fried hockey, just the way my mother made them, with mustard and crackers, saltines. Perfect. Now, not Gucci, not upscale, a little cheaper, but family style for sure. So
Yeah.
come on up. You're close enough. You're 30 minutes away from me. We're not going to be strangers here because I know you and you got German blood. We'll figure out how to get some German food mixed. Well, we'll bring beer. There
I'm
you
more
go. You
Italian.
bring
My
the
name is
beer.
German. I'm more Italian. Either way, I'm happy though. Let's
You
yeah,
bring
yeah,
the beer, and I'll bring the crab cakes. How about that?
perfect.
All right. Michael Gehlken, longtime NFL reporter. Those in Dallas, those in Oakland, those in Vegas, those in San Diego know. Anybody who covers the league knows my friend Michael Gehlken. And enjoy yourself. Get to the park with your daughter. You got to go now. He's got to go babysit. First steps last night, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. Look at your eyes. Look at how
yeah,
happy you
it's the
are.
best.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. Happy you're doing that. You don't have to cover the Cowboys game next week. You're off. I am Nestor. He is Michael. Luke is out in Owings Mills. He still covers the. Dare I say, the day that Luke comes to me and says he doesn't want to cover the team anymore, we still love it. We still dig it around here. Luke's covering the baseball team and the football team. It's an exciting time. Come on out and do what Michael's going to do. Get a crab cake with me. We're BaltimorePositive.com. Stay with us.